little bit, see if anybody joins. Just working on some pillows. A little bit of finishing prep work. Ooh, someone's watching. I'm not sure who. Can you hear me okay? Maybe, maybe not. Oh, maybe more people. Not sure if anyone's saying anything, but I can't see anything if anyone's commenting. Oh. Well, if you're watching, say hi. Working on stuffing a fallow pillow with a tail. Had a couple people ask questions previously, so I guess I'll answer those, and if anybody that's watching has questions, then you can ask them and I'll answer them. One question was, what got me into fur work? From Jacob Heath Shearling. He does really amazing stuff on Instagram. My husband John traps mostly muskrat and beaver, and I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago when the fur market kind of crashed initially and muskrats were worth like $1 each. He decided to get some tanned, and he was going to have a pair of mittens made for me, and then we got him tanned, and then we were talking about it, and he talked to somebody who made mittens, and we were like, well, I can sew, I guess maybe I'll just try to make some mittens for us. So I did, and it was kind of fun, but also really frustrating. So I was using my mom's old vintage Kenmore sewing machine that she gave me. Hi, Stacy. Thanks for watching. And it was just not the best thing to use for making mittens. But that was the start of what got me into fur work, making mittens for us. And then had a couple people I knew that wanted some mittens, so made mittens for them, and then I started to make mittens to sell them, and then hats, and then I started getting better equipment, and that really made a big difference. Another question is, what is my favorite fur to work with? Oh, hi Debbie, thanks for watching. And I really don't have a single favorite, so I guess I'll just talk for a while about all the furs that I like working with. I really like muskrat bellies, the bellies specifically, because they're really soft and dense. I have some muskrats for something I'm working on. The lighting's not the best, but the belly fur is just so soft. The back fur is kind of shiny, longer, but the belly fur is really nice. So that's one of my favorites. Beaver is really nice. Beaver is nice because the hide's really sturdy, so that just makes it a little easier to work with. Badger, I did a couple badger hats for the first time, I don't know, over the summer, a few months ago, whenever that was. And badger was just really beautiful. Kind of hard to work with because the fur is really, or the hide is really thick, but very pretty. Let's see. fox is beautiful. I like working with fox and raccoon, coyote. There's not much that I don't like working with, although, yes, deer species, fallow deer, white-tailed deer are probably one of the worst to work with because the actual hair is so thick. It adds a lot of thickness and makes it hard to sew. So they'd be my least favorite. How long have I worked with fur? 4-ish years, 4, maybe 5, something like that. Remember I think I made the first pair of mittens before my son was born, and he's 4 and a half, so something like that. A couple more questions from Beth, my sister-in-law. What is something I dream of making? I really want to make some muskrat pillows for my house. I saw a muskrat coat where the pelts were cut and sewn into a chevron pattern, and it was really, really cool. So I don't really want to make a muskrat chevron coat, but I do want to make some muskrat chevron pillows for my house, and I've kind of been really, really slowly working on that. But there's a lot of just time and figuring out how to do the pattern pieces so that they're the right size to fit on the pelts without wasting too much, and then how big to make them and how big the pillows will end up. So hopefully I'll get those finished eventually. But that's something I'd really like to do. Kind of very, very, very slowly been working on a coat project with the help of Chris Williams, a retired furrier in England who's been helping me a lot. He's really great. But that's been on the back burner for a little while. But I do definitely want to finish that. And I don't know if I'll make any more coats in the future. They're just big, big time commitment, and then the challenges with making sure they fit whoever you're making them for, which is difficult if it's not someone who's local and could try it on as you go. I do have a client who's interested in a muskrat blanket, I think a king-size muskrat blanket, so that would be a big challenge, and would like to do that eventually. And I have a whole bunch of ideas for little things that I would like to make, that I'm just kind of waiting on time to figure out the details of how they would go together and do some trial and error on those. Let's see. Oh, could I make the same things and use faux fur? Was another question from Beth. I could, definitely, but I choose not to. Really like the sustainability of natural fur. Everybody's trying to use less plastic, and fake fur is plastic. So that's kind of the main reason why I'm not really interested in making hats and mittens with fake fur. But that is a very good question. Another question from Beth. Do I listen to audiobooks or music? Usually audiobooks, generally fiction. I used to read books, sit down and read real books with pages a lot before I had kids. But once you have kids, there's just less time to sit down and do stuff like that. So I've really enjoyed listening to audiobooks, and still get to experience stories without having to physically read them, and it's nice to be able to enjoy stories while I'm working. Not everybody gets to do that. So that was the end of the prepared questions I had. Does anyone have any other questions? You can type them in, then I'll see them as they come up. Otherwise, I can just keep rambling about random stuff. Been in the new studio space for a month and a half, 2 months now. It's been really nice. Really, really nice to have a separate workspace, and that's all that it's for, so there's not kid toys lying all over the place while I'm working, and I don't have to put away the sharp things when I'm done. I can just leave everything out and lock the door. What kind of pillow are you making? Oh, hi Amber. This one's fallow deer with a tail on it. Fallow, as you can see, the hair on it likes to do its own thing. It's kind of sticking up in places, but that's just the way they are. That's the way they're gonna look. Some of the other ones, like this one, is a black buck. The hair's really short and it just lays really smooth. I like these a lot. This one is oryx. I don't know if I say that right. Some kind of African antelope species, I think. There's an oryx with a tail. It's kind of fun. This one's really, the hair on these are really pokey. It's not my favorite just because it doesn't feel that nice. It's not really a pillow you'd want to sit down and lean your back on. It'll poke you through your clothes. Any other questions? Oh, thanks, Amber. Can you hear me okay? Let's see. Oh, somebody asked the other day how I started sewing, or how I learned how to sew. Growing up, my mom taught me how to sew. She's pretty much always sewn. I said she was in high school, I think, was when she started sewing. So she taught me how to, she made a lot of her own clothes for a long time. She taught me how to use a sewing machine and follow a pattern. But I wasn't really, and I could sew, and I did some necessity sewing, like hemming curtains and kind of altering some of my clothes that I would buy. But I didn't really get into it as a hobby for myself until I was pregnant with my second baby. And then instead of getting into nesting, like cleaning and painting and doing that kind of stuff, because I'd already done that for my first kid, I got into sewing and sewing cloth diapers and sewing baby pants, and then it turned into sewing maternity clothes and nursing clothes and stuff like that for me. And then it was really fun to sew stuff for myself. So then it was baby clothes and clothes for me, and then somewhere in there I started sewing mittens with fur, and then kind of stopped focusing so much on sewing clothes for me, and then was sewing mittens and hats and stuff for other people, and just kind of evolved from there. Oh yeah, and the baby moccasins. I forget about those. I did baby moccasins for a while. Those were fun. Those were really fun to sew for my babies when they were little. Not really, geez, it's probably been a couple years now since I did a pair of baby moccasins. Do I use the same sewing machine for clothes and fur? Good question. No, I use an industrial fur sewing machine for fur. I have a few older videos of using the fur sewing machine, and then I have a nice domestic home sewing machine that I use for clothes. When I started, I was using my mom's old Kenmore sewing machine, I think from the 70s, that she bought for herself when she was in high school. And I used that for a long time, and then eventually got to the point where I wanted something that just had a little bit more features. So I bought a Baby Lock is the brand home sewing machine. And then I also have a Serger sewing machine that is really good for clothes, but it only does fabric, not fur or leather. Oh, what material do I use on the back of the pillows? This is a velvet. I can't really see. It's a really short velvet. I used canvas for a long time, and then I found this velvet recently and thought it would be really nice for pillows, and it does feel really nice for the pillows. So I think I'll stick with this. It's hard sometimes to make sure the lumps are out of the stuffing once they're in there. Is there a reason I hand stuff instead of using a pillow form? Yeah, I used to use pillow forms, and they're hard to stuff through the zipper opening. Could put in a bigger zipper, but it seemed like no matter how big the zipper was, it was still hard to get the pillow form inside. So that was one reason. And then the pillow forms were kind of flatter and not as fluffy. So I tried both and decided I liked the fluffiness of the hand stuffing a little bit better. And with the pillow forms, I'd shove them in there and it was hard to get them in, and then it was hard to get them flattened out. And then the corners, the stuffing would kind of like go into a ball inside, and then I'd have to go back and hand stuff the corners anyway. So I ended up going to hand stuffing, and then also I guess it's a little bit easier once the customer gets the pillow. Once you use it for a while, it compresses a little bit, and then if you want to add more stuffing, it's really easy to just open the zipper and add more stuffing. Needs a little bit more. And another reason, if you have like a normal cloth pillow, it's nice to have a pillow form inside so you can take out the pillow form and wash the outer covering. With fur pillows, you can't wash it, so it doesn't really matter whether or not you have a pillow form inside that you can take out. But that's a very good question, and something I put a lot of thought into, as you can see. So there, once the zipper's closed, you can't even really see it. There's that one done. It does take a little bit more time to stuff them by hand, but then it costs a little bit less to buy bulk stuffing instead of pillow forms, so probably evens out in the end. Oh, thanks, Stacy. Any other questions from anybody? Trying to think if there's anything else can think of to talk about. Hope everybody's having a decent winter. I'm ready for coronavirus to be over. I'm sure everybody is. It's been an interesting year, for sure. Do you use leather point needles in your fur machine? No. The fur, which is a very good question. The fur machine uses round point needles. Leather point needles usually have like a, what they call it, like a sword point or something, an extra, like a cutting edge. So the fur machine came with needles that are round point. So that's what I use. I do use leather needles in the leather machine. Question about pricing. I will send you a message after. David Hughes. Amber asked, do we still make clothing for the kiddos? Because you think that's cool. Not very often. I don't really have time anymore to sew clothes for the kids. I did make them masks to wear to school and preschool, and they got to pick out the fabric for the masks, so that was fun. And Della helped to put the elastic through, and she likes helping. Put the kids in charge of stuffing the pillow. Yeah, they probably would be capable of helping, and yes, it would get all over the place if the kids helped stuff the pillows. They like to come in here and steal stuffing out of the box and then run around with it. Eventually I think they'll be old enough to be helpful without also being destructive, and that'll be really nice, because if there were 2 or 3 of us in here stuffing pillows, it'd go really fast. It also goes faster when I'm not talking. So only a few more to go. Any other questions? Pillow size, if anybody was wondering about that. For these, pillow size just depends on how much of the hide there is, because these pillows are made from hide that's left over from getting mounts done at the taxidermist. So I try to make the pillows as big as they can be with what's available, what's left over after the taxidermy work. But which I guess is pretty much how it would go with any species. If it was beaver, it would depend on how big the beaver is, or coyote, how big the coyote is, which is another nice thing about not using pillow forms, is I can make the outer shell whatever size it needs to be and stuff it, versus thinking about, okay, I can only get pillow forms in 14 inches or 18 inches, but then if I need a 16-inch pillow, I can't get a form that size. So, all things to think about. Oh, this one, Axis deer with the tail on. I think these ones are so cute. Just a few threads to stick back in there. It's always kind of challenging, so I have to use a sharp leather needle and not stab myself when it goes through the other side. successfully did not stab myself. One more to go. Nope, a couple more to go. I always underestimate how long pillows take to make because it's just a square. It's really simple. But even just the little stuff like making sure any loose threads are tucked back in takes time to do. Stuffing them takes time. Putting the zipper and the pillow backing always takes longer than I think it will. That was all the threads. So in one pillow, especially the ones with the tails, I end up using all 3 of my different sewing machines. So they each have a different purpose. The inside to sew these 2 side panels together, use the first sewing machine to sew those together. And then I use the first sewing machine to tack the tail onto the main part of the pillow so that it doesn't shift around. I use my Baby Lock, my home sewing machine, to install the zipper, and then I use the leather sewing machine to sew the hide and the pillow backing together. I have made pillows on the first sewing machine, and then I use just the regular sewing machine to install the zipper and use the first sewing machine to sew the whole pillow together. And that works fine, but I like using my leather sewing machine a little better now that I have one. But they each have their own purpose and things that they're better at than the other machines. If anybody has any more questions, I'd love to answer some questions. Well, I guess I'll finish up this pillow and then stop the live Facebook Live thing. This was fun, guys. Thanks for joining, and thanks for asking some questions. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Wasn't as awkward as I thought it was going to be. don't often do things that don't take a lot of concentration. Most of the time I'm working on things, I would not be able to do this. I can't do two things at once. Can't talk and sew. So this was a good chance to answer some questions while doing some work. After all the pills are stuffed, then I go back through and lint roll everything, make sure there's no loose hairs before they get boxed up and go to their homes. So there's that one finished. These ones just look so nice, the Axis pillows. Okay, well, I'll go now. Bye. Thanks everybody. Thanks for joining in. That was fun.